In this video, we will discuss other issues that may arise during the sampling process and compromise the validity of any statistical study. There are many possible issues that may compromise the validity besides sampling biases. Here's by no means a complete list of terms that one should be familiar with when analyzing statistical study. Some of the terms are examples of specific bias, and some are examples of unethical practices that lead to some type of bias. So the first issue is undercoverage. Undercoverage is when some groups in the population are left out of the process of choosing the sample. So an example of an undercoverage that we already discussed in this course was the surveys about Ford Edsel, when only those people who own telephones were contacted. So, and at that time, only richer population had phones. So the less rich population was left out. Next, let's discuss a push-pull. So push-pull is an interactive marketing technique, most commonly employed during political campaign, in which an individual or organization attempts to manipulate or alter prospective voters' views under the disguise of conducting an opinion poll. Large numbers of voters are contacted with little effort made to actually collect and analyze voters' response data. Instead, the push-pull is a form of telemarketing-based propaganda and rumor spreading disguised as an opinion poll. Push-pulls may rely on institutions or information gathered from opposition research serving the political opponents. Next are loaded question. A loaded question is a trick question which presupposes at least one unverified assumption that the person being questioned is likely to disagree with. And this type of question puts the person who is being questioned in the defensive position. The assumption in the question could reflect badly on them and pressure them to answer in a way that they wouldn't otherwise. Here's some examples of loaded questions. Do you actually support this terrible politician? So the assumption is that the politician is terrible and the person knows that, which in case could be the opposite. Next, can you meet to discuss this tomorrow, or are you too busy slacking off? So again, the assumption is that the person is slacking off. Have you accepted the fact that most scientific studies don't support this theory? So again, the assumption is that scientific studies don't support this theory. Next, let's talk about question order. The order that the questions are asked in a survey or a study can influence the answers that are given. And the a reason is because the human brain has a tendency to organize the information into patterns. And because of that, the earlier question may provide the context or the information that subjects use in formulating their subsequent answers. So questions that came before may affect responders' thoughts, feelings, and attitudes, or simply may provide a new information. An example, Pew Research just in December 2008 poll. When people asked, all in all, are you satisfied or dissatisfied with the way things are going in this country today? When this question was put immediately after the question, do you approve or disapprove of the new George W. Bush is handling his job as president? So 88% said that they were dissatisfied. But when this question was asked by itself alone, only 78% um, said that they were dissatisfied. So as we can see here, the context um, actually affected how people felt and responded. Next up is social acceptability bias. And that's the tendency of survey respondents to answer questions in a manner that will be viewed as favorable by others. So that's going to result in overreporting good behavior and underreporting of bad or undesirable behavior. And that's a problem for studies, especially that's a common problem with self-reporting studies. So, for example, when confronted with the question, do you use drugs or illicit substances? The respondent may be influenced by the fact that controlled substances are generally illegal, and they may feel pressured to deny any drug use or rationalize it. Next on our list is a publication bias, and the publication bias is a type of bias that occurs in published academic research. It occurs when the outcome of an experiment or research study influences the decision whether to publish or otherwise disregard it. Publishing only the results that show a significant finding disturbs the balance of findings and inserts bias in favor of positive results. So publication bias is sometimes called the file drawer effect or file drawer problem. This term suggests that results not supporting the hypothesis of researchers often go no further than the researchers' file drawers, leading to a bias in published research. So it appears that there were no negative results, only positive results are published. So patterns in missing data could be a problem too. If values are missing completely at random, and that happens because sometimes people just don't answer certain all of the questions. So if the values are missing at random, the data sample is likely still be representative of the population. But if values are missing systematically, then analysis may be biased. So here's an example in the patterns of missing data. We have a longitudinal study of a blood pressure medication, which means that we apply the blood pressure medication, and longitudinal means that we're going to observe the results in the future, right? But patients do not show up for follow-up appointments. So we're missing that data, and that prevents us from uh, actually establishing the relationship between the blood pressure improvement and the medication being administered. Another type of a known sampling bias occurs in a self-interest study. And a self-interest study is a study in which the researchers have an interest in the outcome of the study. So, for example, would you trust this Lucky Strike advertisement knowing that the medical study was sponsored by the tobacco company itself? There are other advertisements. For example, I read a study about the sleep, the effect of sleep on your health. And the study was done by the pharmaceutical company that produced the sleeping pills. So basically, you always have to ask yourself, who is paying for this study? Another example of self-interest is with the global warming and the climate change issue that we're seeing right now. The thing is that the big industries will lose more money if they have to change their technology rather than spending money for lobbying the policies. So again, when we're reading studies about climate change, that we have to ask ourselves, who is paying for this study? Another interesting phenomena called the precise lies frequently happens in our age of mass media. And basically, what precise lies are is misrepresented information, partial picture, cherry picking. So, for example, in this graph, we're going to see the Arctic ice area in 1989 and 2009 by month from January to December. And as you can see in 1989, the graph is generally above the red one for 2009, except this small um, interval right here between March and April, mid-May. So, and this is exactly the data point that was selected by the Heartland Institute to argue that there was more ice in 2009 than in 1989. And I wanted to listen to this clip right now. Again, we're just gonna listen part of it, and you can actually look it up later if you wanna listen to all of it. Listen how he talks about cherry picking and biases.
Me, Zubin, check it out. Fake news. It's actually not fake. What they do in fake news is they take data and they cherry pick it and they turn the statistics to say whatever it is they're trying to say. And when you look at nutritional studies and nutritional reporting and documentaries like this newest one, The Game Changers, about how going vegan, having a vegan diet is the way to get ripped, and it's got Arnold Schwarzenegger on there. He's like, ever since I cut out meat, now look at me, I'm so swole. Think twice. The way people interpret nutritional studies and the way the press does it is truly fake news. And this is why. Let's take a look at the vegan thing. In this documentary, they talk about all these different studies, and my friend Peter Attia has written extensively about this. I'll link out to it. The problem with these studies when you're comparing a vegan diet, which is, hey, look, it's a great diet, but it's an elimination diet. You're taking stuff out of the diet. What are you comparing it to typically? The standard American diet, or SAD. And we know what's in that. Yeah, there's meat. There's also gooey dairy desserts. There's also McDonald's. There's hella McRib in the standard American diet. So you're comparing what is pretty much universally acknowledged as the worst diet in the history of mankind. And the reason we know that is we have an epidemiologic study of 300 and some odd million Americans who are fatter, sicker, more diabetic, and are dying. And anytime we export this diet to the rest of the world, they die too. You're welcome, world. America number one, Iran, puh, okay? And so the truth is, when you compare that crappy diet to a vegan diet, who's gonna win every time? It's gonna be the vegan diet, assuming you even do a study that makes any sense. And this is the second problem. Anytime you compare vegans, say, or anyone on a very restrictive diet to the rest of the world, you have something called the healthy user effect or healthy user bias. Vegans are some of the most health conscious people on the planet. They care about the environment, they care about what they put in their bodies, they care about their yoga, they meditate, they're woke, right? At least that's what they'll tell you to your face every time at the party to try to make themselves feel bigger than you. All right, and it works. So the truth is, when you're comparing this really healthy group to a standard group, there's a ton of biases. Some of them you can adjust for in the multivariate analysis, and some of them you can't. And even when you can adjust, it's hard to do. There's a lot of bias you don't even see. There's less smoking, there's more exercise, there's more meditation. All these other things make it really, really darn near impossible to tease these out unless you do a randomized control trial where you put one group into just eating vegetables and vegan stuff and the other group into eating whatever your diet you're comparing it to. And it's very hard to do that because you have to put people in cages and control everything they eat for years. And when we look
All right, so as we understood, there are fake news, there are lies and false studies. So the outright lies. There are posts, broadcast publications, um, citing non-existent databases, non-existent authors, non-existent journals, um, and citing real researchers in the field. But if we can contact those researchers, they never said what some claim they said, and they never wrote anything that uh, you will hear people say that they wrote. So, what's the takeaway from all of this? As a responsible citizens, it is your responsibility to be aware of all of these issues when conducting or analyzing a statistical study. Just be careful. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about data types.